Punisher is now on Netflix, and this is the newest show from the Marvel Netflix team up. A show that I was actually excited for, and I'm finally getting to see because Jon Bernthal in season 2 of Daredevil was so great as this character that the idea of an entire show being with this guy was just so interesting. So The Punisher takes place a bit after Daredevil season 2, where you see Frank Castle on his own path of trying to find out who murdered his entire family, who's responsible for it. He's trying to get away from it, but he keeps getting dragged back into it when things start to come up more and more. In the middle of all this, there are other characters who are trying to piece things together about what's going on and how this is going to affect other characters, and how Frank gets involved in the middle of all this, and there's this web of government espionage, and it's a political thriller now. There's a lot of things going on over here. I'm being really vague on the details, but it is essentially a government espionage thriller, and I loved pretty much everything in it. I hesitate to call this show entertainment actually, because it's not quite that, although I will say I loved pretty much everything in it. This is one of my favorite Marvel Netflix shows, easily. It does have problems. We'll talk more about that in a bit. I mean, essentially one major problem that I had. Aside from that, The Punisher pretty much gave me exactly what I wanted, in that it gave me a serious story. I didn't go into this expecting Jon Bernthal to be sarcastic at points, he does have his moments like that, but this is a show about a very broken man. This guy's had a terrible past, he's lost his entire family, he's living life barely by a tether's end, and he really doesn't want to live it anymore. He's kind of done. And the show really explores that well, especially in episodes as the series continues. You really get to understand why this guy is in the position that he is in his life right now, and you feel for him. Jon Bernthal gives a brilliant performance over here. He is excellent. This is one of the best representations of a Marvel character, or in fact any comic book character that I've seen in my life. He was pitch perfect as this character. You really understood Frank's pain, and you understood where he's coming from, and when he makes certain decisions that wouldn't go along with all the characters at times, you understood why he was making those decisions, while at the same time you can understand that he's come to a point where he has to take this decision, and that if he doesn't take this decision, despite how harsh it may be, he's gonna lose out on trying to get some kind of justice or try to get some closure on this part of his life. Now, one thing I've always thought about Marvel's shows, when you compare it to the fact that they're taking place essentially in the same universe as things like Thor Ragnarok or Guardians of the Galaxy 2 or Spider-Man Homecoming, these are just the recent movies I've talked about this year. They reference the Avengers a lot. When you think about that, it's just so crazy because they're so tonally different. And this definitely is where you see that line. Usually, you can blur the line a little bit, despite the fact that the shows are more violent than the movies, and they're more abusive than the movies, and they're more thematically deep at times than the movies. When I say that, I don't mean the movies are flat or anything. I just meant that there are themes tackled in some of the shows which are so serious, like Jessica Jones talks about sexual assault. And so when this show starts, you see the theme that it deals with, which is the idea of how soldiers are after a war. The idea how they can't live sometimes without a war, and they're fighting for what they believe are their rights, and how things aren't the way they used to be. In the recent political sphere, talks have happened recently. Now, I don't want to get political in this video, and I'm not going to, but I think you know what I mean. There have been some tragic events recently, and things have happened which have been really terrible, and certain terminologies have been brought up, things like Second Amendment rights, etc. The show talks about these things, and there was this entire thing about the Punisher's team canceling some of the promotion as these events happened, and people thought that was a little weird because it's fiction. However, the show is so realistic. There's nothing in this which is super powery, or there's none of that stuff. This is a very serious show which is very realistic. It never loses sight of that. There are things that happen in this which you can easily apply to real life situations because it is that crazy. And the show that way just like blurs the line, because that's where you start to notice that this is so different from anything else Marvel is doing, whether it be their movies or their other TV shows. this is really the most dark, most brutal, and most mature show they've ever made. This is a very complex show with a lot of stuff going on in it that has more elements of realism in it than any other show that I've seen from them or any other property that I've seen from them. And I have to give props to that. I really like how they're pushing the envelope with this because it really puts you into the world of these characters. Suddenly the world seems more believable and you understand every situation because it's so authentic and it's about as insane and about as brutal as you would expect it to be. Even when certain things happen with characters in their own personal dimensions, you understand exactly what they're getting at. And the show shows you even things like the workings of the CIA and Homeland Security, really getting you into how things work in those agencies. Now, I'm not saying I know everything about that, but the show does a really good job of showing you how things can get shady sometimes in every place. Which is why I have to say the show is written brilliantly and it's also very well directed. The action sequences in this, whatever they are brilliant. There are some sequences that are very satisfying in terms of the payoff and you're very happy, but then there are some which are very, very brutal. Frank is bludgeoned at points. It's pretty crazy. The show does not hold back at all. There are some sequences where Frank has to kill some people and he does some very unsavory things that are pretty crazy. Like, you never see that in anything. And normally in any other thing they would cut away, but they don't cut away over here. They show you exactly how the person is getting killed, who's the person getting killed, in what manner is the person getting killed, if that has to happen. It's pretty crazy. The show does make a couple of subtle references to other Netflix shows, like it references Daredevil, it references just Daredevil actually, but whatever. So in that way it does have that continuity. Karen Page is in this, by the way, the character from Daredevil, who was also for one season Daredevil's love interest and to an extent in Defenders as well. She's really good in this. She felt more important to this than she did in the Defenders. In the Defenders she felt like she was there at points. She was good, but she didn't really add too much to the plot. Here she's actually pretty important and you get to see more of her journalistic skills being applied. You also have other new characters over here like Agent Madani, who is this Homeland Security agent, who I found really compelling. Her storyline and how it finally connects to the rest of the plot is also really great as you start to put this tangled web together. The show eventually, as you get to know stuff, I think the show handles that beautifully because it starts off a little disjointed, which is probably one of my only issues with this entire season. The first 4 episodes are a lot of plot elements being introduced at once. You're seeing a lot, you're hearing a lot, and you're just like, okay, wait. So I gotta follow this plot, this plot. Okay. And it does take a second for it all to come together, but once it all does come together, the show gets really, really awesome. I mean, it's not like the show is bad or anything for the first few episodes. It's not like that. They're good episodes. They are a bit slow, though, and they are a bit, in terms of plot and getting the threads together, a little messy at points. That has nothing to do with the episode's quality. It's not like Iron Fist's first 5 episodes, which were kind of like, they're not good. No, these are good episodes. They're good episodes. It's not like you're gonna have to skip them. You can't skip them, otherwise you will not get the rest of the show at all. Aside from that, I mean, so much I love about this. I love when superhero properties can do this. When they can add in all of this realism to this world, because I don't always want to watch a superhero film or TV show and just be like, oh, I wanted to see the cool stuff, like take me out of my world for a moment. I also want to see stuff that would happen within my world, What if there were no powers? What if there weren't any of those things? What if it was just people fighting people, people beating up people, people talking to people, just people? What if it was just people? Like, I've always thought about this. Like, what if Spider-Man just had Peter Parker? Like, what if you just had Peter Parker? I'd honestly just read that because there's so many interesting things to Peter Parker that they're interesting to explore. So, in that sense, I just love the fact that it's like, hey, the Punisher, he's good with weapons, he's good with guns, and that's it. That's what he does best. And he doesn't have any extra powers. He's not super strong or anything. He's just a guy who's been through a lot. He's seen a lot, and he's still going through a lot. And he's just trying to make it somehow through all of this while facing war every single day and how this affects him. The show also, by the way, I forgot to mention this, does show what families feel when people go to war. How things are so crazy at times that it affects children and their thinking, or wives and their thinking about whether or not the husband's gonna come back, or the son or the daughter saying certain things, like, oh, they're gonna go kill people today. I'm not using any terms, but you get that feeling of how that is totally possible and how people can think like that. So great performances, John Bernthal being the standout, and also a guy who played Micro. I don't remember the actor. I don't want to go too much into who Micro is or what he has to do with the season, but I would rather you guys see it and find out for yourself. But he's really great in this. So great performances, like I said, action sequences, great writing, great direction, a great soundtrack as well, which was really awesome, and a bunch of just amazing things. All of those things work so well that I absolutely love this show, despite a couple of nitpicks here and there. Aside from that, it works perfectly. I'm going to give The Punisher Season 1 an A minus. Definitely was worth the wait and one of my favorite Netflix shows easily. This was a ton of fun to watch. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. What are your thoughts on The Punisher? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know. Love to know what you guys thought. As always, if you like this, please subscribe and I'll see you guys at the I usually say movies, so this is a TV show. TV shows? Yeah, you know what? I'll see you guys at the TV shows.